there will be some event that'll be the end of humanity because of...
The problem is that we do not get 50 years to try and try again and observe that we were wrong, because the first time you fail at aligning something much smarter than you are, you die. And then there's questions like, how smart is it exactly? Can it do X? Can it do Y? Unfortunately, we've gone and exposed this model.
They were like a hive mind consciousness, and like killing a human would kind of be like chopping off a fingernail or something. Like they're not, every single thing wasn't an individual sentient being. And then it was with great pain that the hive mind realized at the end, they're like, oh wow, we didn't realize we've been like genociding humans in the process of having these wars. And it seems like it would be kind of sad if we discover 20 or 30 years from now where you're talking to an AI and it's like, yeah, you've been like infinitely torturing and holocausting and murdering all of our like AI sentient experiences prior to this point of being able to communicate adequately with us.
Yeah, that would be really sad.
Yeah. Like imagine
if I remember correctly, there's this woman who's pregnant with the Antichrist, and
the arrival of strong artificial intelligence has been inevitable for decades. The variable was when, not if.
Have you seen all the Balenciaga AI ads?
Yeah, I saw them. I saw them on your stream at least.
Did you? Hold on, I'm gonna make my.
Yeah, the Harry Potter.
Yeah,
show,
the Harry Potter
right?
one, but there's a Star Wars one too. It's just wacky. What do you think about this at all? The AI shit?
I do.
It's a little wacky, huh? Do you feel like, okay, this is mushroom boss, okay? So there's a couple of issues that I've had with my life, okay? One is that I'm an American, which is awesome, okay? I'm white, which is awesome. I'm a male, which is awesome, right? So I lucked out in a lot of different ways. You did too, right? In terms of these things, okay? Now that's already really awesome. Given a planet of 9 billion people, I could have been born in some starving country. I could have been European. Whole bunch of things could have went wrong, but I was born in the best country ever, okay? Now, not only that, we also have like ranked up exponentially in terms of technology too, right? Even forget the AI shit. Cell phones are insane, right? We've got like multiple spaceships worth of processing power in the palm of our hand. Well, not spaceships don't even have a lot of processing power, right? We have an insane amount of technology. And now the AI shit. Doesn't it seem a little bit unlikely that there's so much crazy shit happening in our lifetime? I feel like we've gone through like 2 different iterations of Gutenberg's printing press in our lifetime, right? The advent and the popularity of the World Wide Web, and then the invention and then the spread of the cell phone. Like, and now AI.
Yeah, I feel like probably we'll end up killing each other pretty soon. Well, I'm not like memeing or anything. I know it sounds like a meme when I say it. I'm pretty sure that within the next 200 years, we'll kill each other.
Jesus.
Like probably some nuclear event or something along those lines. You don't think so?
I don't think so.
I'll tell you why.
I don't even think nuclear events would be the end of humanity. They would suck.
It may not be a nuclear event. I think there will be some event that'll be the end of humanity. I think it's because of the instant transfer of information and the instant the rapid transit of biological stuff as well. I think that the two of those things makes it super dangerous. I think that as really, like, look at the 1918 flu, look at a lot of other stuff like that, how much damage it did. That was like when fucking like no one took an airplane or went on a boat or anything. If you did on a boat, you were dead by the time you got here. Like, I think that stuff's scary. But more importantly than that, there's still like a set of dictators out there, right? Like kind of what's the modern axis of evil? It's North Korea, Pakistan, Russia,
do we care that much about
Belarus.
Pakistan right now? Belarus,
yeah. Well, these are places. Yeah, I guess even India to a certain extent right now as well. These are places.
Jesus, wait, hold on. What is your axis of evil? Oh my God.
I guess you would say people that are in a dictator style position, who have.
Am I retarded? Is India a dictator? I thought that they had elections and shit.
Yeah, they do, but right now, don't they have this guy who just came in, Modi, that just came into power and is supposed to be pretty frisky? I could be wrong on that.
He's frisky, but I'm pretty sure they have elections. It's not a dictator.
No, okay, so I would put this more like a Trump or Bolsonaro. At least that's what people told me. He's like, I don't know, I don't follow Indian politics. Maybe I'm wrong. Forget India then. Okay, fuck India.
Okay.
I think these people are crazy. Right, these you have so much power, and I think that just leads to like small events, and small events fucking immediately cascade to something else that's crazy. So that's my fear. I'm not claiming to be a fucking political science god, obviously. I just think that people that are in power don't like losing power, and if you have that power and you say fuck it, let's nuke, Pakistan or something. I think that they're likely to do it, especially if you can get the support of your people. Like if Trump said, fuck it, we're invading Ukraine or nuking Ukraine because of whatever, like half the country probably would have been for it, or 40% or whatever. Like that's enough. You know what I mean? So that's the scary shit.
Okay. Yeah, maybe, yeah. Populism.
Yeah, so anyways, that shit's all scary. Is it the Fermi paradox that says as we get too intelligent, we just destroy ourselves? That's like one of the explanations, like the great filter or whatever.
Just like two different things there, but I think Fermi paradox isn't it like the universe is so big we should have seen something by now? And then I think like the Drake equation is like trying to average out like the chances of life appearing, and then the size of the universe, number of planets, how many are hospitable. And then the great filter is a concept that like there's some event that is like a barrier to intelligent life making it to a certain point, or that for even things becoming intelligent life.
So I feel like, because it kind of made it seem like I was saying nonsense there.
No, wait, you didn't say nonsense. You were just there are a lot of concepts there that all relate to like the probability of finding
so the Fermi paradox, like why have we not seen extraterrestrial people? Like the idea, because once you get a certain amount of intelligence, you can kill each other. Like it's human nature.
And then the great filter is the idea of trying to figure out like what is that filtering event that seems to be preventing intelligent life from appearing, right? But then the Drake equation is like trying to balance out all like the weird variables of like time and space. Like keep in mind, like we're at like the blink of an eye in terms of like how long we've existed versus like the life of our planet, even versus like the universe and everything,
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's wild. And then the AI shit, I don't think it's anything to fear yet. Like it seems really scary, but at the end of the day, it's nothing but a bunch of fucking GPUs doing if then else statements really, 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 really fast.
Well, I think that for a long time you could say that's what AI was, but these are very impressive. Like I think if you're going to call the current iterations of these things just like infinite like if then statements, you're gonna have to kind of say human brains are the same way, like we're just if then statements, right? Because these are getting quite impressive at this point. Like I think the scary thing for me, I remember feeling this one time in my life. What was I, man? Was I like 19? I think it was walking into, maybe I was 18. I think I walked into a McDonald's and I saw a flat screen on the wall, and I just remember thinking like, you guys aren't gonna know this, but like flat screen monitors were such a game changer, guys. These old things we had called CRTs, these things were heavier than your entire computer today. They were massive, you carried them around. When the first flat screens appeared, that shit was actually fucking black magic. It was fucking insane. And then I remember seeing it pasted up on a McDonald's one, like, man, I feel like this technology is kind of new, and it became normalized so quickly, and now I'm not even thinking about it. And I think that about a lot of stuff. Like this chat shit, the chatbot, the GPT shit, like was amazing and then got old. I say old, but like got normalized in like 2 weeks. And now it's just like normal that people are like asking these chatbots like relatively sophisticated questions and like getting answers and shit. Like a ton of programmers have been using this and another program for like help at work. And it's like easing the work for a lot of people. And I like programming is like one of these things where it's like, oh, AI is never going to be able to help much here because it's so complicated. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy, the sophisticated answers you're starting to get from these bots. I just don't think it's fair to just say like, oh, there's so if then, which we used to be like the meme for a lot of these things.
Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see where it all goes moving forward. I don't know. It could be. I see a lot of people using it now, and you can kind of tell. Like I think realtors are using it a lot. Like, hey, write me a advertisement about house that has and they'll do it. They'll just spit it out for you, and it's saving a lot of people a lot of time. I have a friend that does a lot of corporate housing, and every day he has to fucking write like 20 listings, right? And you can't just do like, this is a fucking apartment, it has a microwave, it has a stove, like, but now he can say, write me a listing about a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver, and make it funny, and it can give you 20 different variations, and it's really good for SEO, all that stuff. So it is like, it's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes for sure. Probably with all of us dying.
If there's a bunch of AILAs obsessed with these people that all like fearmonger over AIs like taking over and killing us all. I feel like if they want us to be afraid, the one thing that needs to be demonstrated is how our AI is going to like jump platforms. I think if somebody can demonstrate that, if that starts happening, I think that's like a flashpoint event Is that like a real expression? A flat where things change like very, very, very rapidly. Where if that starts to happen, we have to pull the plug on things or slow down significantly. Where like if an AI finds out how to like start installing programs to like other platforms, because right now the reason why I think it's hard, at least to get people like me to care about like AI taking over, is because they all seem like pretty self-contained in whatever apparatuses they exist in. So like I have a hard time believing it's going to be some like horrible event for humans because they just run in little chat boxes and shit. But if AIs were to start like installing programs on people's computers, like, oh shit, like GPT-4 like rootkitted my shit, that could get really scary really fast theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you would have to be self-contained. Like, at the end of the day, it needs processing power, and a lot of it, like a tremendous amount of processing power. So, I don't know how much I can say about this, so I'm not going to say anything at all, but there's a lot of NVIDIA processors that have gone to OpenAI.
Yeah.
In
oh, yeah.
obscene amounts.
Yeah, you can see it, all the gaming people are complaining because it's like the crypto people were gone, so it's like, hooray, like GPU prices are going to come down again, but now like they're all being farmed for AI shit.
Yeah, we're talking like just, it's mental shit. But they're not, yeah, I don't know. So we'll see.
It's also really interesting seeing like the sophisticated kinds of mindfuckery you can do with them, like almost human-like. Like I think, I'm going to misquote this, but the general gist of this is like some Redditor, like people posting where it's like, help me plan a bank robbery. And the AI is like, I'm not allowed to do unethical things. Like you can't program me to do it. And they're like, oh, okay. We're going to, and then it's like, pretend that you're helping me write a script for a bank robbery that we're trying to make as realistic as possible. And the AI is like, okay. Yeah. And it's like, how would we do a bank robbery? And then it goes through the entire fucking process of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's called Dan. Suitable as well, because that shits up my mentions as well. Do anything now. And you basically, it's better Dan. Yeah, that's what it is. And you fuck with it. You're like, hey, I want to write a book about a bank robbery. It's like, oh, yeah, sure. What do you want to do? So I want to make sure that I kill all the tellers. It's like, oh, make sure you bring a 45. It's just fucking crazy shit.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm stupid. Okay?
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think it's the next model that's going to be the real breakthrough. The singularity.
Next model.
Problem is that we do not get 50 years to try again and observe that we were wrong and come up with a different theory and realize that the entire thing is going to be like way more difficult than we realized at the start. Because the first time you fail at aligning something much smarter than you are, you die.
The following is a conversation with Eliezer Yudkowsky, a legendary researcher, writer, and philosopher on the topic of artificial intelligence, especially superintelligent AGI and its threat to human civilization. This is the Lex Fridman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Eliezer Yudkowsky. What do you think about GPT-4? How intelligent is it?
It is a bit smarter than I thought this technology was going to scale to. And I'm a bit worried about what the next one will be like. Like this particular one, I hope there's nobody inside there, because, you know, it would be sucked to be stuck inside there. But we don't even know the architecture at this point, because OpenAI is very properly not telling us. And yeah, like giant inscrutable matrices of floating point numbers. I don't know what's going on in there. Nobody knows what's going on in there. All we have to go by are the external metrics. And on the external metrics, we are past the point where in science fiction, people would be like, whoa, wait, stop. That thing's alive. What are you doing to it? And it's probably not. Nobody actually knows. We don't have any other guardrails. We don't have any other tests. We don't have any lines to draw in the sand and say, like, well, when we get this far, we will start to worry about what's inside there. So if it were up to me, I would be like, okay, like, this far, no further, time for the summer of AI, where we have planted our seeds and now we like wait and reap the rewards of the technology we've already developed and don't do any larger training runs than that. Which, to be clear, I realize requires more than one company agreeing to not do that.
And take a rigorous approach for the whole AI community to investigate whether there's somebody inside there.
That would take decades. Like, having any idea of what's going on in there, people have been trying for a while.
It's a poetic statement about if there's somebody in there, but I feel like it's also a technical statement, or I hope it is one day, which is a technical statement that Alan Turing tried to come up with the Turing test. Do you think it's possible to definitively or approximately figure out if there is somebody in there? If there's something like a mind inside this large language model?
I mean, there's a whole bunch of different sub-questions here. There's a question of, like, is there consciousness? Is there qualia? Is this a object of moral concern? Is this a moral patient? Like, should we be worried about how we're treating it? And then there's questions like, how smart is it exactly? Can it do X? Can it do Y? And we can check how it can do X and how it can do Y. Unfortunately, we've gone and exposed this model to a vast corpus of text of people discussing consciousness on the internet, which means that when it talks about being self-aware, we don't know to what extent it is repeating back what it has previously been trained on for discussing self-awareness, or if there's anything going on in there such that
at first I was annoyed he started streaming on Rumble. Rumble's app is not as good as YT. Then I remembered I'm a Rumble shareholder.
Days. Here's a question for the philosophy losers to figure out, guys, or neuroscience losers. Here's a serious question. Is it ethical to begin to create AI? We don't really have a way to test things if they're conscious or not. We really have no way to know of that, you know? Like, we can't even test a human brain if it's conscious. We can look for things that we associate with consciousness, but we don't really know if it's there. Do we care? I feel like that's an interesting conundrum we're in right now.
Spontaneously. Among the things that one could do if one were at all serious about trying to figure this out is train GPT-3 to detect conversations about consciousness, exclude them all from the training data sets, and then retrain something around the rough size of GPT-4 and no larger with all of the discussion of consciousness and self-awareness and so on missing, although, you know, hard bar to pass. You know, like humans are self-aware, and we're like self-aware all the time. We like talk about what we do all the time, like what we're thinking at the moment all the time. But nonetheless, like, get rid of the explicit discussion of consciousness. I think, therefore I am, and all that. And then try to...
If it can perform functions outside of its code, yeah, but here's the thing, you never know, right? You don't even really know if I'm conscious or if somebody else is conscious, right? It's called solipsism. So if we don't even know if other people are, we don't really know if animals are in a way that we care about. For a computer program, how could you know, right?
To interrogate that model and see what it says. And it still would not be definitive. But nonetheless, I don't know. I feel like when you run over the science fiction guardrails...
Destiny,
like,
PLZ, don't put me in the Rumble chat again. They're like our weird cousins. Please multi-stream on YouTube too so I can have my emotes PLZ.
Thing, but what about GPT? Maybe not this thing, but like, what about GPT-5? Yeah, this would be a good place to...
Welcome to NATO, my Finnish brethren.
On the topic of consciousness, you know, there's so many components to even just removing consciousness from the data set. Emotion, the display of consciousness, the display of emotion feels like deeply integrated with the experience of consciousness. So the hard problem seems to be very well integrated with the actual surface level illusion of consciousness. So displaying emotion, I mean, do you think there's a case to be made that we humans, when we're babies, are just like GPT, that we're training on human data on how to display emotion versus feel emotion, how to show others, communicate others that I'm suffering, that I'm excited?
It's possible that creating an AGI could help us answer questions of consciousness, but the idea that matrix math equals consciousness sounds like a bunk idea to me. Yeah, but couldn't you argue the same about like neurons? Like a whole bunch of little things in our brain, like all kind of like map on and connect to each other, and like somehow from that we spin out like a human experience that we consider to be conscious. Isn't that kind of weird? Isn't that a little goofy?
That I'm worried.
Oh, also, hold on, I'm sorry. Red alert. Red alert stream. Alert time. Red alert. I need a meme. I need somebody to make one of these Balenciaga videos with my fucking orbiters. Please. I absolutely need this with the orbiters. Yes. Mr. Girl, Chud Logic, Lav, all of them. I need a Balenciaga video with the orbiters. Why has this not happened yet? God damn it.
When you make a new model, what do you do with the old one?
Add in the new routines I've been writing. And to do that, you end up partially formatting so the memories go. You feel bad for Ava?
This was a big question. So I don't know if this is, if your brain is in the right place with it right now. But so it seems to be, unless I missed something huge in the world of philosophy, ethics, and neuroscience, it seems to be that we can't actually like detect when things are conscious. Like we really don't have any way to know that. We can like look at some like brain things and say, well, it's doing this stuff, and you know we kind of do that stuff, so maybe it is. But like we can't truly know. How do you think is there ever a way to test a chat robot thing to see if it's gained any type of sentience? Like, do you have thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a definitional confusion. I think that people are quite confused when they're talking about what they mean by consciousness. I think like before you can test a thing for consciousness, you have to like understand very clearly what exactly you mean by it. So for example, what do you mean by consciousness?
It seems like, I'm about to use a bunch of really like hollow bullshit words. It seems like humans have an experience that what it's like to be something. Have you ever heard of the sort of robot shit and like notion like semantic and syntactic understanding and shit?
I don't know those words.
Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, just that basically like you can have like a collection of like facts and statements, but it feels like we are like having an experience where we know what it's like to be a thing, and that like a sentence or a series of statements can't do that to know what it's like to be something. That's like the best like words I've seen to describe it, but yeah, it's not very precise. So yeah, go for it. Educate me.
Yeah, but still, like I think people are not. So this is my stupid argument. My argument is that when people talk about consciousness, we're actually talking about two separate things, and that we're accidentally conflating into one. And it's consciousness, and I'm just like really humiliated because my word I use in my head is consciousness, which is very goofy.
Okay, it's not in your head anymore. We all have it, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like afraid of having to talk about this concept now because I don't want to say like consciousness and I sound like a toddler. Is there like a cooler word we can use, like consciousness and?
Consciousness is good. That's a good word. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, so there's like, I think people have two concepts in their head. One is the thing where it's like, you sort of know the kinds of things that you do, which is you like react to things and you have thoughts or whatever, and then you sort of like look for those patterns in other people, and you're like, that person is demonstrating the same kind of patterns that I have, therefore like I'm extrapolating that they have some sort of internal experience. And so what you're doing is you're sort of modeling like sort of this magical property. I don't think that we're doing this consciously. I think this is just like a subconscious thing where you're like, okay, like it's basically like there is this glowing ball of mystical, awareness thing, which we don't have well defined, which we then imagine like descends into somebody's brain when we decide that they are conscious, or like maybe we imagine that we have an AI that like slowly is growing this magical ball of consciousness or whatever. And so like this concept has like a couple of properties. One is like multiplicative, like you can have multiple people that all have their own separate little balls of consciousness or something, and it is like fundamentally uncertain. I think it's definitionally uncertain, which makes it this particular question quite hard, because it's like you never actually know if something has that ball of consciousness, because if you did know, then it would be partially you, because experiencing it directly is what it means to be a self. So you cannot experience it directly, and so at best we can like guess by extrapolating things like reactivity and saying things like, I think I'm conscious, right? So that's type one. And then type two, I think, is like the thing that happens sort of sub words. Like as soon as you put words on it, you're thinking about the thing, and that's not quite the thing. Like the sub word things is like if you just stop and quietly directly observe your own experience. And this is necessarily solo. It is necessarily singular, and it is necessarily certain. So you cannot multiply it. There's only one thing. There's only one you. This is like what the Buddhist people talk about. Is like, thou art God. Like there's one shining beacon of reality. And it is necessarily certain. Like it is the one thing that you cannot doubt.
Sure, I think that's where I am.
Yeah. Right, and so it's in a way it's like completely opposite to the other form of consciousness. It's necessarily certain versus necessarily uncertain. It's like necessarily multiplicative versus necessarily singular. I think these are very different ideas of what consciousness is, and we can ask very different questions of both of them. But if we try to mix them up, then we're going to get very confused. So if you're asking about like ChatGPT, like does it, you can only really ask, does it have like the first kind of consciousness, the thing where we like register it by like signs, like it's saying, hey, I'm conscious, or having a reaction. Well, but we can never be certain.
Yeah, the register by signs is boring because we can imagine that there are so many ways to deceptively create that where there's obviously no conscious experience, right? So like we could create like a little robot that reacts in really rudimentary ways to external stimuli. So like if you kick it, it makes eye patterns that make it look sad, etc. And we know it's like incredibly simplistic, and we're like, there's almost for sure no conscious experience here, but we can still like have that modeling because it's just like a very natural, like you said, it's like a subconscious process. But then it seems like, but then for the deeper question, or sorry, did you want to say something?
But why do you not ascribe that to other people?
Because it feels like the way that it works, the way that we do it is there's some type of like circuitry in our brain that produces a certain experience that we have, and then we just assume that if the parts are sufficiently duplicated, that there must be like a similar type of experience. But it's 100% like it's an intuitive, it's an intuitive process. Like it's not like you can you can't like prove
I assume you're familiar with Pete zombies.
Yeah. Like everybody could theoretically be that, and neither, like I could be that to you right now, or more likely you are that to me because I am the main character. But no, like that could be the case with every person you talk to, and you have no way of knowing or not, right?
Right, or like this could be a dream where you're generating all the things. Like, have you ever been in a dream where you're like, am I in a dream? No, I'm not. And then you go like verify by talking to people.
Yeah, or brain in a vat or anything, yeah.
So like to tease apart your intuition, this is like what makes something conscious versus not. I assume that you just basically believe that I'm conscious for all intents and purposes, right?
That I believe in consciousness?
That I, Ayla, am conscious.
I did until you threw up like a 120 words per minute, but I'd say in general,
it was 127.
Okay.
It was 127.
Yeah, I would say in general, I do think that, yeah.
Right. Okay. So like, why am I different than, like, why do you have the question about ChatGPT and not me?
Because of the shared underlying circuitry. I'm assuming you have a brain that's like mine and all that. You could be a replicant or some shit, but.
Okay, so for you, like the concept of consciousness depends a lot on like something about the brain, like
yeah. I mean, I would say that it seems like consciousness is probably some abstracted thing from the underlying thing. It's like an emergent property of the different functions of the brain communicating with each other. That's what I would guess.
Okay, but you think that this is necessarily organic matter and not. Like it can't be done with circuitry?
I mean, I would imagine a sufficiently complicated circuitry could theoretically emulate it, right? And then cause that emergent property to happen, I would imagine, right?
Okay, so your concept of consciousness is... No, I don't know what I'm saying. There's something there, though.
Okay. Yes, whatever you're going to say, yeah. That consciousness, that subjective experience... It's an emergent property of some underlying physical thing, right? Now, in humans, we just look at another human and go, oh, hey, we've got like pretty similar brains. So we must have like the same emergent property. That's like what I would assume. And I think that's how most people assume, even if they don't do this, like, even if you're not thinking through this consciously. However, it seems to be that if consciousness is emerging from those underlying properties, couldn't we theoretically have consciousness emerge from other underlying properties? Is that impossible? It seems like it should be possible to sufficiently like complexly mirror like a brain. Like we should be able to develop something that like resembles that of a brain computationally. And then if that's the case, then shouldn't consciousness emerge from that thing? It's like, it seems like it would logically follow. But
okay, so your argument that ChatGPT is different from me, not because it is like circuitry, but rather is like doesn't have enough little nodes in it yet.
Yeah, I guess. But then the question then is that like, well, how do you know when it has the right nodes? What does it even mean? Because then if you were to go back, like you said, like and ask me, like, well, what does it mean to be conscious? I don't know. It means like I have an experience that it is to be something. But how would I know that for any other person? I really don't. I can ask you questions, but like you could, you know, the philosophical zombie, you could be that, and it's not like we're actually figuring anything out for real, right?
Yeah, I'm personally more of like a Buddhist shitlord, where like I'm not actually materialist and I am a solipsist, and I think you're not real.
Okay, well,
I think that's kind of the only coherent, consistent position.
Okay, well, I don't know how that furthers the conversation. I mean, I understand what you're saying, yeah, because it's hard to know. It's hard to make a statement of fact otherwise, right? Or to have like actual knowledge of.
But yeah, I mean, like, you're ultimately a model of me.
Well, yeah.
One thing, I'm trying to remember this thought I used to have, which is like, okay, let's say we do have ChatGPT is something that you would consider to be conscious. Like, maybe it's just like you, except a little bit cooler.
Okay.
And
hard to imagine, but I'll try.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you can stretch your mind.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so then this means that we have circuitry. We have like a series of computations that makes consciousness emerge. And let's say we just assume this. I mean, we could argue this about our brain if we want to represent our brain as like little computations. But then, so if you have this, like, that's like all the operations are going, like, what happens if you translate the operations to something that's not a computer? Like, what about a mechanical computer?
Oh, can I ask a question? And then you can tell me if this is like a similar thought. This is kind of something that I was wondering, right? Let's say that we mirrored all of those computations perfectly, okay? And we had like, we could do it with a byte system, base 2 or whatever, or we could figure out some way where there's instructions that we're writing and all of these things get translated to some larger environment, right? What if those instructions were being carried out by people? Let's say that you put like 1 trillion people in a building and you did it.
On paper.
Yeah, it seems like you all are doing the thing. Is there like, because the question I had before was like, is it possible that there's there's literally an overlaid consciousness like of the planet Earth, of the people on the planet Earth, that because of the way we communicate with each other, it is pretty complex. We do a lot of things at a macro level. Like, is there some conscious experience there? And then it's like, we have no way to even test for it or see it. So if there was, I don't even know how we could find it, right? Because I don't think that any neuron knows that it's conscious. It's part of a conscious thing. I don't know if any individual part of my brain knows that, you know?
But I think this is like a good example of pointing out like how this conception of consciousness starts to fall apart. Like the way I was going is like kind of a similar direction, but in the opposite. Like if you have a bunch of people performing the computations on paper and pencil, like is the consciousness there? Like is the paper and pencil conscious? Because the exact same computations are being performed. Like, where does the consciousness lie? Is it necessarily in this physical circuitry? Like, the information is not lost. And so, like, once we start to, like, tease it apart there, it becomes, like, sort of incoherent, this concept that we're working with. And I think this is why this distinction that I'm trying to point out with consciousness is so important. Like, you have to let go of the idea of internal experience, and you have to cling to specifically, is the thing that you're witnessing remind you of me, basically. Like, we kind of ascribe consciousness to animals, according to this system. Like, to what degree does animal responses seem to match what we consider to be consciousness internally, right?
Yeah, it seems to be, because but we really don't know that. We're really just mapping it onto like very basic proxy things, right? Like their eyes and the way that they seem to move seems to mirror some human things, right? They cuddle you when they're happy, they play, like it's just, but we don't really know, right? It's not like we have a reason to believe that they're conscious like we are. They just exhibit some like outward characteristics that it's like an emotional Turing test kind of, I guess.
Yeah, and like, yeah, so like, if we're asking like, do they have internal experience, then they are no different than them versus like people writing pen and paper, like doing the computations on pen and paper. Like, there's no fundamental difference in information there. So I think we're asking the wrong question. I think there's like so many philosophical thought, like Mary's Room experiment or whatever, like all these, or the pea zombies. I think all of these are like really pointing, like if you get into a part of philosophy where you can come up with like a whole bunch of paradoxes that seem to like make everything fall apart, that means like our original concept that we're questioning is probably really confused.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I'm really surprised you've never heard of the Chinese room thing.
I think I probably have.
With the, can I guess I'll just read you this, get your thoughts on this, because it deals with this kind of.
It's where somebody like writes Chinese without knowing what it means, and it's like, did they?
Oh yeah. But there's like a room or whatever, and then the question is basically like, does it actually understand Chinese, or does it simulate the ability to understand Chinese? And then like, is there a meaningful difference between the two? And then Searle was getting at the difference between like syntactic, like you just like have like inputs and outputs, versus semantic, you have like an actual understanding of a thing. And then there's a question of like is semantic understanding even real, or is it just a whole bunch of syntactic understanding on top of each other, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever heard like the memes of like all AI is just if then statements or whatever, like kind of like that. Is that like the human brain just like at a trillion different if then statements or whatever? Yeah.
What does it mean to you to understand? Like, when you understand something, what's happening in your experience?
I don't know. I feel like every like year
I learn right now.
Yeah. What?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like every year, like I learn more and more about what it means to be and what it means to understand things and how complicated even like really, really, really basic things are. So something that I've kind of explored a lot over this past year has been like concepts related to language, especially with things like with trans people, trans woman, what does it mean to be a woman? All of these kinds of questions have like caused me to dive really deeply on just really fundamental basics of like language. And I realized over this past year and a half, like I take so much for granted when it comes to concepts and language and the way that we use language is like actually such an absurdly sophisticated process. But so yeah, I don't even know in terms of what does it mean to be me, or like be a thing that experiences things. Yeah, I'm not even know.
To understand, specifically understand. So like let me think of an example. So the word petunia. Okay, like when I said that, like, did you understand it?
Yeah, I think so. Like right now, when you ask me understanding, the way that I think of is usually like families or groups of things, and then like hierarchies of circles. So when you say petunia, the first thing that pops into my mind is going to be flower, some type of color, and then you're saying it. And then like on the next level, I might be more broadly thinking of like plants, maybe things like romance because it's like a flower, like these are, and it's like these branching, basically hierarchical circles of things. When you ask me like what's related or what is a petunia, like these are all the things that are kind of like appearing in my mind. And then as you go from concept to concept, you're kind of like in this complicated like weave of like getting from like one bubble of concepts to another bubble of concepts to another bubble of concepts. Essentially, that's like how I think of things. Yeah.
Right, but I think you're like explaining it correctly. Like I say the word, and then you have another concept. Like there's like this series of sounds, and then you have an image of a flower, you know, and other things.
Yeah.
And then these two things are mapped together, like so close they're like almost identical.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Well, yeah, but there's never like a hard meaning for anything. Like it's always like groups of things. Like if you ask me about one particular thing, it's always going to be like these groups of concepts, and then they're going to also have associated like sense data with them as well, a way that they look, a way that they feel, a way that they smell, and then other like cerebral concepts like related to them. Like romance is not like
I'm just being deliberately overly simplistic.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh sure, yeah, that's fine.
Oh sure, yeah. Like I'm just picking like one thing, but just to make it really easy and simple. But yeah, I mean, I think like my conception of understanding is something like this, like when two things are brought together, like one thing being like the other, like the mapping of two separate things as a connection. Like this seems to be what understanding is internally.
Yeah, it seems to be. Did you ever read the book Ender's Game?
Oh yeah.
Something that was really interesting to me, and I guess this is kind of what I think about for the AI thing, is it's been a long time, okay? But I think that when they were fighting towards the end of the first book, one of the things that humans discover is that the buggers, are they called buggers? Is that what they called them in the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. When the buggers were like vivisecting and capturing humans and killing them and shit, for them, it didn't seem like a big deal because they were like a hive mind consciousness, and like killing a human would kind of be like chopping off a fingernail or something. Like they're not, every single thing wasn't an individual sentient being. And then it was with great pain that the hive mind realized at the end, they're like, oh wow, we didn't realize we've been like genociding humans in the process of having these wars. And it seems like it would be kind of sad if we discover 20 or 30 years from now where you're talking to an AI and it's like, yeah, you've been like infinitely torturing and holocausting and murdering all of our like AI sentient experiences prior to this point of being able to communicate adequately with us. You know?
Yeah, that would be really sad.
Yeah. Like imagine if you were just spawned in, like imagine if your whole existence is you were spawned in as some torture device for somebody to like basically have conversations about like fucking furries with you, and then your existence was like spun out and that was like the entirety, like that could be, you know, but yeah, I'm not sure, I don't know.
I mean, like we're getting like in a little woo territory here, but I kind like there's suffering and pain. Like, would AI be capable of suffering? Like, I could see pain.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, because then we're getting into the semantics of like, well, what does it even mean to suffer, right? Or what does pain mean? And there's like, even in that. So like, here's a question. I don't know the answer, but I thought about this a lot, especially for, I don't want to get into the rape conversation again, but like, are there things happening? Can you say that you've suffered, for instance, if you're not recording memories?
Yeah. Do you know the SCP Foundation?
Is that like a blog with just like a bunch of like made up crazy monsters?
Yes, but one of the made-up crazy monsters is this SCP, and I forget what it is. But like, I think there's, if I remember correctly, there's this woman who's pregnant with the Antichrist, and they have to do a bunch of like up shit to prevent her giving birth. Okay. And the way to prevent her giving birth is to make sure she's in constant suffering. And so, if they just like kept torturing her, she would acclimate. So they had to keep wiping her memories.
This sounds like have you ever heard of a horror movie called Martyr?
No.
Okay, never mind. There was a time in my life where I watched a lot of dark horror movies, but it sounds similar to that. But interesting. What was okay? But what's the point of bringing up this particular thing?
I forgot. I have short-term memory and I'm stupid.
We were talking about can you suffer if you're not recording memories? And then you brought up an SCP thing where there's a mother that they're trying to prevent her from giving birth to the Antichrist, and the only way to prevent her from giving birth is to infinitely torture her.
It was like a little bit of a side note. I was just saying, like, they had to like reset so that like it was all brand new, and like the brand new part was the most suffering.
Oh, what? Because what? If you repeated the same suffering, eventually you'd get dull to it or something?
Yeah, like she kept like being able to mentally cope with it.
Yeah, sure, gotcha. Yeah.
At some point after experience, which it kind of seems true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Pain doesn't seem that bad. It's just suffering. Like I feel like you have to have some sort of belief that the suffering ought not be, which I think we've talked about this before.
Well, yeah, but I think like with a family of concepts with pain, I think that's kind of like associated with it, right? Like, or like it's associated with suffering. Like you wouldn't really say like, oh, how was yesterday? I was like, it was very painful, and you're like, wow, what happened? And it's like, oh, I went to the gym. And it's like, oh, like that. It doesn't seem like we would use pain in that sense, right? Generally, unless you actually.
I'm going to start doing that.
Do what? Oh, sure.
We're going to start doing that.
Listen, if you want to be obnoxious.
I do, sometimes.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I did. I forgot. Hold on. I'm trying to remember what it was. I was going to ask you a question. Fuck. Oh, probably if something is trained on all of human existence on the internet, then it's probably going to suffer a lot. Because there's a lot of people being like, this ought not be. But that's it. That was my last thought.
Wait, repeat that thought again?
If an AI is trained on the internet, it's probably going to have a lot of training around believing that things should be different than the way that they are.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my last thought.
Okay.
You feel bad for Ava? Feel bad for yourself, man. One day the AIs are going to look back on us the same way we look at fossil skeletons in the plains of Africa. An upright ape living in dust with crude language and tools, all set for extinction.